Even he got butterflies in his stomach. It would be inhumane not to feel fear as you disembark on enemy territory, knowing as you approach the border officer that if something goes wrong, you'll be in huge trouble. What helped Gadi lower his level of fear was the knowledge that he was lying, smuggling, and using false documents, all for the good of his country. It wasn't that he was a liar. He was lying for a cause. He was an emissary. But now, he couldn't hide behind that logic. He was lying to his own country too, entering an enemy state without permission and about to carry out a mission that no one has approved.
You just heard from author Mishka Ben-David reading from his novel Duet in Beirut, which has just been published in a French translation that is Duel à Beirut. Mishka, hello and welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
This story focuses on an expelled Mossad agent, Ronen, who stays on after a failed anti-terrorism mission in Lebanon. His former commander, Gadi, then decides to track him down in enemy territory. That's a part of Beirut, which is controlled by the armed group Hezbollah. You actually served as a Mossad intelligence agent for quite a long time, I think 12 years?
Yes.
I can imagine there's a lot of personal experience in this book. You were also involved in tracking down a terrorist leader like your protagonist. Can you tell us a bit more about that case?
Well, there were a few cases that we tracked terrorists. There was a case that I based this book on, which was tracking the head of Hamas after he ordered 2 suicide bombings in Jerusalem, where dozens of people were killed and dozens were injured. And we were asked to track him down and to see to it that this is stopped. Now, I took our own experience and moved it from Hamas to the Hezbollah, from Amman to Beirut, changed a little bit the details, but the story more or less is similar to what had happened in actuality.
Okay, so you had an in on that. Now, the book explores these big ideas of loyalty, personal sacrifice, both for individuals and as part of political and military systems. What's the message that you hope that readers will take away from this book?
There is a message to the Israeli leaders and there is a message to the rest of the world. The message to the Israeli world is that you always count on Mossad. You think that Mossad is perfect. You think that Mossad can never fail. And actually 99.99% of their operations are successful and you don't know anything about them. So if they fail once in 1,000 operations, be kind with them. Don't attack them. Don't crucify them, because the true story is the 99.9% that of operations that do succeed. What I wanted to tell the non-Israeli reader is who are the Israeli people that are in Mossad and that sometimes are even engaged in assassinations. That these are good people, good-hearted people that do what they do for their country and because the country needs them to do this in order to survive. And in the piece that I've just read, we're talking about lying. These are people that are even uncomfortable in lying, in using false documents. And they take refuge in the knowledge that they are doing it for a cause and not because they themselves are liars.
It is true that it's rare to get insight into that notoriously secret world. Now, it is set in the recent past, a tense time in the Middle East. How do you see the evolution of the political climate, as someone who was working at that time, the security situation, looking at it today? Are things so different now?
No, they're not that different, but there are 2 different trends that develop. One is that Israel approved its ties with many Arab countries. There are the Abraham Accords, there is already a 30 years peace with Egypt. There is a long peace with Jordan, and now with Abu Dhabi and talking with the Saudis. So this is one very positive trend that Israel is finally, after 75 years, being accepted in the Middle East. The bad news is that nothing moves forward with the Palestinians. And although 30 years ago the Oslo Accord was signed, and it seemed that we are going towards a two-state solution, nothing moved forward. The Palestinian didn't move forward. The Israeli right-wing parties sabotaged every possibility to move forward, and we are stuck in that thing.
So work on the ground for agents is just as complex as it ever was. Indeed, experience in the Israeli Defense Forces seems to be a rich source of human and political drama. The TV series Fauda was born when an actor and a journalist sat down and shared their accounts of time served in the military. Now, the series has been a runaway success, recently launching its 4th season. Let's get a reminder of the action.
עכשיו עלתה על רכב חיזבאללה. سبت تطلعي من هون، احنا اثنين بنكون بخطر. اطلعوا من السيارة، ابعدوا! أنا عاوز شو أعمل لك؟ أشتخ أنت أختي ואת אחותי בידיים. תקבלי לאבד יותר אנשים. תעשה את הדבר הזה, ואחרי זה אתה תבוא הביתה.
Now, Fauda's not the only hit TV production. There's False Flag as well. It's recently been adapted for an American audience. What do you think of these productions? How true do they ring to you?
If you look at the scene that was just aired, it is unbelievably close to reality that happens in Israel almost every day in the West Bank. When Israeli forces are raiding terrorists that hide usually in Jenin, in Nablus, and are trying to arrest them inside a very hostile territory and amongst a very hostile population. And it's very close to what we've seen. On the other hand, when I look at non-Israeli productions, if you look at all the series of James Bond, for example, they are so far from reality. They are so far from what really happens, and they have their own law, their own universe. They operate in their own universe, which the audience like.
Indeed, speaking of the current context, in Israel, in recent months, they have experienced the largest protests in the country's history. Hundreds of thousands of people in the streets of Tel Aviv due to the proposed judicial reforms that would curb the power of the courts. Now, there have been huge gatherings in public spaces, of course, but also resistance from other sectors. For example, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant was sacked after he spoke out against the measures, and former Mossad chief Dani Yatom spoke to France 24 earlier this month about that proposed bill. Here's more from him on the possibility that the security forces will defy the government.
I am highly afraid that if Israel is going to change its faces and becomes a dictatorship, many of those very brave and Israeli lovers people will do their utmost in order to avoid a reserve service. It will cause also fractures in the standing forces, and not only among the reservists. So I cannot even imagine a situation where Netanyahu will succeed.
Now, Mishka, Dani Yatom is your former boss, former chief of Mossad.
Yes.
Do you agree with him? Do you believe Israel's headed towards a situation where the military and intelligence services would go against orders from the top?
The new proposed changes in the judicial system were supposed to create a situation where the coalition elects the judges of the Supreme Court. In a case like this, when the coalition, when the government has a control over the Supreme Court, there may be a serious problem for democracy. And this is why hundreds of thousands of people went out to the streets to stop this. If this hasn't been stopped, and now Netanyahu called for a halt, at least for 1 month, and trying to negotiate it with the opposition. But otherwise, there could be a situation that the Supreme Court overrules laws that the coalition passed, and then the chief of staff of the army or the chief of police must decide whom do they comply to the law, which means to the directions of the Supreme Court, or to the Prime Minister or to the Minister of Defense. And that's an impossible situation.
And dangerous mixing of politics there and the judiciary. Now, coming back to creativity now, we asked you what's on your radar at the moment, new artistic, cultural output that's caught your eye. You pointed us in the direction of an Israeli musician and producer, Kutiman, and I know that there's a family story in his latest track. Tell us more.
Yes, well, my son, Omer Ben-David, who is a movie director, he is the one that directed this specific clip, as he directed many other clips, and he is working on his own feature film.
Okay, well, creativity then, the family business. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mishka.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll leave you with a clip of that track, My Everything by Kutiman featuring Dekel. It's video directed by Omer Ben-David. Remember, you can get more arts and culture on our website and our social media feeds. There's more news coming up on France 24 just after this.
France 24, your economy explained. Liberté, égalité, actualité.